There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show. Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Geoff Smith. He is the Chief Marketing Officer over at Centrical. Jeff, how's it going today, sir?
It's doing wonderful. I'm really glad to be here, Logan.
Awesome. Jeff, can you give us a little bit of context on what you guys do at Centrical? Just, who you guys serve, what you do, for a little bit of context for today's conversation?
Yeah, so Centrical is an employee engagement and performance management platform. And really, we believe that when employees know what their goals are, what they need to achieve them, and are motivated to do their best work, that's really where the magic happens. They succeed and the business succeeds. We help companies, help their employees perform their best by combining advanced gamification, personalized microlearning, and real-time performance management. And it's a combination of all three of those things that really enable companies, their managers, and their employees to really do their best work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of fascinated with the idea of gamification and the ways that it can improve performance in a lot of different areas. But that'll be a topic for another episode. We may have to have you back on just to dive deeper into that. But to transition into today's conversation about the rebranding effort that you guys just went through, going through the name change and the rebrand from Game Effective to Centrical. Can you tell us a little bit about the thinking as you guys went into it? It's not something that you do lightly or you do often, even compared to a brand refresh, like you were saying, Jeff. So can you tell us about some of the things that were in your mind that just told you, yes, this is the right way to go? What were some of the questions that you were asking yourself that prompted you guys to take the deep dive into a full rebrand?
Yeah, so it's not a decision that you make lightly. When I was, first starting at Game Effective, in fact, I spoke to many different people during that process, and in my first few months on the job, from investors to clients to employees and whatnot, and they all said basically the same theme, which was, man, this is a great company. We've got a great technology, as evidenced by all the great things we do for our clients. You've got great clients, as evidenced by the high retention rates and and expansion and all that stuff. But man, the messaging just is not there. It needs to be improved. And so I knew early on that we were going to have to make a change, and at least from a positioning, messaging, and definitely a visual identity perspective. We didn't actually make the decision to change our name until a little bit into the process, because as we were going into the messaging and the positioning and everything else, it was like, we just can't say what we want to say with a name like Game Effective, right? Because that's all about gamification, which is, where we started and where, we built this great foundation, based on, applying game mechanics into the workplace environment. But it really just didn't incorporate everything that we do today. So in short, we just outgrew it.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense when you're starting to, and I think it makes sense it shows the thought that you put into it, that you were looking at the messaging and the story that you wanted to tell before you thought about, changing the name. I think some folks like, okay, we need new colors, we need a new name, let's start there, and then we'll start working on the messaging. So I think that's a lesson that I pull away from what you said there, is that you need to think about what is the story that you want to tell, and then you start working on rebranding, which, you've got to start with a name. Much like we help our customers launch their podcast, the very first thing we work on with them in their kickoff and branding call is the name of the show. So tell us a little bit about that first step in the process of getting to the new name, Geoff.
So that was perhaps the most emotional part of this entire journey. Coming up with a new name for a new company or a new product is like, naming a new child, right? A new baby. There's excitement, there's anticipation, there's joy. But when you're renaming an existing brand, and we were a 6-year-old company at that point, it's like renaming your 6-year-old child. There's a lot of reservations. There's a lot of second guessing. There's a lot of confusion and concern. And so with that, we hired a brand agency who was knowledgeable in our space, and then we fired them because, a little bit we felt like the process was a little over engineered and too regimented, but equally because I just don't think we were ready for them. And we needed to figure out some things on our own. So we learned a lot during that initial process, and we kind of struck out on our own and went about it that way.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, maybe that typical process, and maybe it's not specific to that brand agency. You mentioned not quite being ready for them or for that sort of process without necessarily calling out, well, they were doing, this that we felt was wrong or something there. But maybe what folks have in mind when it comes to that naming process that maybe you learned or something that surprised you in going through it.
Well, there is definitely I think a standard methodology or an approach to renaming, and you can go online and see all sorts of different ways of picking names, and whether they are acronyms or whether they are descriptive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I think we were not ready for was knowing exactly what we wanted, right? And so, we would start off with, let's do the descriptive name, and let's do, this other approach. And then, of course, we would come up with all these ridiculous names, and then we're like, wait a minute, that doesn't work at all. So we went through 200, plus names during this process. And we loved names, and then woke up the next morning and hated them. And we didn't like some names, and then they grew on us. And honestly, that's the worst approach, right? Because you want your customers and employees and partners, et cetera, to get it and like it right away, right? Mm-hmm. And so this just went on and on and on. And, we came up with some really ridiculous, names that were, rightfully so, thrown immediately into the trash can. And at one point, frankly, I even gave an ultimatum to the management team. If we don't have a new name by Monday, we're sticking with the one that we have, right? And then that, I think, was the ultimatum that we needed, because I think there was a lot of emotion, right? Emotion getting into it, and I think we needed that focal point to really get us to that finish line. And of all the people in the organization, our CFO wrote me a quick note and said, "Hey, did we consider this name?" And it was like the name. It was like, oh, and it was amazing, right?
Today's growth story is all about search engine marketing. The company we're highlighting is SentinelOne. This challenger cybersecurity brand was set out to disrupt the endpoint protection space. Their brand was top-notch, their product was innovative, but they were struggling to gain traction online in an already developed industry. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first quarter of working with Directive, SentinelOne was able to increase their organic traffic by 128%, and overall lead volume by an outstanding 251%. Now, I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
I think you point out some good things for folks to keep in mind. One, part of the creative process is going to be coming up with very bad names and very bad ideas. I heard a podcast episode about how The Daily Show, how their creative process works, and it got us thinking for our social and our audience growth team here at Sweetfish, how we structure creative meetings, and that was one that I think is good for us to keep in mind. And two, some of the best ideas may come from the unlikeliest of places. Maybe your CFO. Maybe that's not going to be 9 times out of 10, but keep your eye out. Keep your ears open for those ideas that may come out of left field. So getting to the name you mentioned was the most emotional part. As you and I were chatting offline, Geoff, you mentioned that the next step in the process is explaining the brand. And this is perhaps the hardest part, right?
Right. So, as you said, the name is emotional. I mean, there's lots of opinions. You go crazy about it, and then you find one. Right. Explaining the brand is, putting that into actual practice. It's like coming up with the actual brand essence and how you want to communicate everything that stands for. And so, we ended up coming up with some great ideas around incorporating or humanizing this new brand, because that was like really, really important to me. I didn't want just to change the colors and a new logo. I really wanted to encapsulate the putting the employee at the center of business success, which is kind of our tagline. I really wanted that to come to life. So along with the brand name, we created this brand mark that really showed that purpose, that the value that we deliver to our customers. And we believe in engagement, influences learning, and then that learning influences performance, which in turn impacts engagement. So it's this like virtuous circle. Mm-hmm. And that symbolism in tandem with the Centrical name, really conveys an employee-centric platform, one that fosters that never-ending engagement, that continuous learning, and the ongoing improvement, and more. And so our brand mark, we started to incorporate this, virtuous circle into it. And in the end, we created this mark that looked like an employee. It had 3 core components. The head was kind of a circle with 2 parts, and then the body was half of a circle. And each part of those circles really encapsulated the 3 elements that make up our solution. That the head was made up of learning and performance. It was kind of a take on that left brain, right brain construct. And then the body and legs were about engagement, or the heart and emotions that one experiences when you are kind of in a gamified experience. Mm-hmm. So it turned out to be such an awesome coming together of what we stand for, and then creating a brand that personified that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see how that part was fun. Tell us a little bit about, the challenging nature of, trying to explain that. I imagine even internally, it starts there before you ever start with the messaging external for the rebrand and explaining the new name and logo and all those sorts of things, right?
Yeah, and that's actually very, very key, because the iterative process and involving bringing people along in that process in the company is so super important. The last thing you want is to have all these closed door meetings and stuff, and then you have your ta-da moment of at least internally releasing the new brand and having everyone go So it's really important to bring people along in that process, and that's that's where the magic does happen, because you start doing quick iterations, and we also invited kind of core clients and partners to kind of help be design partners in this along the way. So we would have touch bases with them to, make sure that we're on track and something that just didn't sound, too foreign or weird in their eyes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. So now let's get to the third step in the process. We talked about getting to the name. We talked about explaining the brand. Now let's talk about where we've kind of started to eke into here, Geoff, and that is launching the brand, the most fun part of the process. Any specific learnings on, rolling out the new branding or things that maybe you wish you could have done differently, or maybe that, kind of surprised you in that process of kind of unveiling and pushing forward and moving forward with the new brand name and identity?
Yeah. So as you said, that is the most fun part of the process, but it's also a lot of work. So, it's not only, creating, new things. Like we created a all new website, a new intro video, new, all sorts of things. Right. But it's also, taking everything that you have and updating it. So there was a lot of work, and we did 3 straight months of long days and long nights in order to get all that done. But at the end of it, I think one of the biggest things that I did right on this was putting the employee first. And so we did a week-long pre-launch internally with just the employees to kind of bring them along and get them up to speed, because after all, they're going to be the ambassadors, right? The brand ambassadors. And we wanted them to, not only understand it, but love it and embrace it and become the best ambassadors that they could. So that was, I think, one of the biggest, things that I did right during this whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're saying there, Geoff, because it makes so much sense to make sure that everybody is on the same page. Also earlier than that, make sure you don't kind of get that internally, because that's the last thing you want to do is turn externally and get that sort of reaction. Any final parting words for folks on this idea and the process of going through a rebrand? Any words of advice for folks who are either thinking about this, maybe they're in the throes of it, maybe they're up all night trying to come up with a new brand name, and maybe they just searched and found this episode of the podcast? Any words of comfort or encouragement that you've got for folks out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I touched on this earlier. Methodology serves a very useful purpose, but if it becomes too controlling, it really creates more problems than it solves. So you got to build with the expectation that you will change your mind on some things, and just know that that's okay. The other big thing is, don't keep emotions out of it. Quantitative input is really important to the process, but a brand, particularly a brand name, is the ethos of your company. It's not cold and personal. It's not ones and zeros and stuff. And you really do need to rely on your gut for, part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are 2 really good pieces of advice, Geoff. Well, this has been a really fun conversation. I encourage people to check out. They can see the new brand identity on your website and kind of see where you guys got to through this process. If anybody's wanting to learn more about you guys or reach out to you and stay connected, Geoff, what's the best way for them to reach out or stay connected with you and the team over at Centrical?
So definitely you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, because that's where I will see you, I'm sure.
Nice. All right. Well, Geoff, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show, man.
Thanks, Logan.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big 3, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.